It's June of 2014. A video pops up online and it's from the jihadist group ISIL. You see this massive bulldozer just tearing down a huge mound of earth, the border between Iraq and Syria. And the title of this video? It's simple, stark even, the end of Sykes-Picot. Just like that, a deal made 100 years ago is suddenly at the very heart of a 21st century war.
So in this explainer, we're going to follow that thread. We're going to trace the long, really tangled line connecting a secret deal from World War I all the way to the conflicts that are still shaping the Middle East today. You're about to see how a simple line, literally drawn in the sand by a couple of diplomats, created these deep fault lines that, believe it or not, are still trembling.
And that just raises a huge question, doesn't it? I mean, why would a modern extremist group care at all about some dusty old diplomatic agreement from 1916? What is it about this specific deal that makes it such a potent symbol of anger, potent enough to be a target for destruction a whole century later?
Well, to answer that, we have to go back, way back. You know, the name itself, Sykes-Picot, it's become this kind of code word, shorthand for betrayal and for borders just drawn up out of thin air. But what was it, really? Who were these guys and what did their agreement actually do?
Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 1915. World War I is tearing Europe apart, and the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled the Middle East for centuries, well, it's falling apart. It was famously called the sick man of Europe, and the big powers of the day, we're talking Britain, France, Russia, they're already circling like vultures, figuring out how they're going to slice up its massive territories for themselves as soon as the war ends.
And that brings us to two key players. For the British, you've got Sir Mark Sykes. He was their expert on the East. And for the French, François Georges-Picot, a seasoned diplomat. Their mission? To secretly hammer out a deal for how their empires would divide up the spoils, specifically the Arab provinces of the Ottoman Empire. And their goal? Well, it was incredibly ambitious.
And this is what they came up with. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, signed completely in secret on May 16, 1916. Now, its most infamous part is a line they literally drew on a map. It ran from the A in the city of Acre on the Mediterranean all the way to the last K in Kirkuk in what's now Iraq. The deal was simple. Everything north of that line, that was for France, everything south for Britain. And just like that, with one stroke of a pen in a room in London, they sliced right through communities, tribes, and centuries of shared history.
But here's where the story gets a whole lot messier. Because while Sykes and Picot were busy drawing their secret lines, the British were, at the exact same time, making a completely different promise to another group, the Arabs.
Yeah, in a series of letters, now known as the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, Britain was talking to Sharif Hussein of Mecca, a really powerful Arab leader. They were basically encouraging him to start a huge Arab revolt against their common enemy, the Ottoman Empire. And the deal they offered? In return for rising up, Britain promised they would back the creation of a massive, independent, and unified Arab state across the whole region after the war.
But if you look at what Sykes-Picot actually planned, it's a completely different story. The exact same lands that were promised for this big Arab state were in secret being carved up like a cake. France was set to get direct control of the Syrian coast and influence inland. Britain would take southern Mesopotamia and influence over the area that would become Jordan. And Jerusalem? That was going to be an international zone. That grand promise of Arab independence, it was a lie from the very start. And when you look at the timeline, the scale of this deception is just staggering. So throughout late 1915 and early 1916, the British are making all these promises to the Arabs. Then, bam! May 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement is secretly signed, making those promises worthless. And just 1 month after that, the Arabs, who have no idea they've been betrayed, launch their revolt. They start fighting and dying alongside the British, all based on a promise that had already been broken. The whole secret only came out a year later, when the Bolsheviks took over in Russia, found the treaty in the old Tsar's files, and just published it for the whole world to see.
I mean, you can imagine the shock when this came out. And the fallout from these backroom decisions, well, it's been echoing for more than 100 years. These borders weren't just random. They were drawn with a specific colonial mindset that turned out to be unbelievably destructive.
So you get these new countries like Iraq and Syria that were basically invented by smashing together totally different ethnic and religious groups. Sunni, Shia, Kurds, Christians, all of them. And often, the colonial powers would then play them off each other. To keep control, they'd install rulers from minority groups, which made those rulers completely dependent on their European backers. It's the classic divide and rule playbook, and it sowed the seeds of so much of the anger and instability we still see.
You know, even back then, some people saw just how wrong this was. The US President Woodrow Wilson, he famously criticized this idea of peoples and provinces being bartered about as mere chattels and pawns in a game. But his ideas about self-determination, they were pretty much ignored by the old colonial empires.
So what did the people who actually lived there want? Well, in 1919, an American-led group called the King Crane Commission went to find out. And the results? They were a total rejection of the Sykes-Picot plan. In Syria, for instance, more than 60% of the petitions they collected flat out rejected the idea of a French mandate. But their voices, they were just ignored.
So when you pull back and look at the big picture, what's the real legacy of these secret maps and all these broken promises? It's a pattern, really. A pattern of outside powers forcing their own plans and their own interests onto a region and leaving behind just devastating long-term consequences.
And this is really the key thing to understand. When that 2014 video declared the end of Sykes-Picot, it wasn't just talking about history. For so many people in the Middle East, that name is a living symbol of a deep grievance, a feeling that their future was stolen and that their present is still trapped by these artificial borders that just seem to create conflict.
Which really leaves us with a tough question, one that you can see playing out in conflicts all over the world, even today. When powerful outsiders draw new lines on old lands, and they completely ignore the people who actually live there, can the wounds they create ever truly heal?